So let's talk about percentages. First of all, let's start with an example. Let's say 5%. Every percentage can be written as a fraction over 100. So that 5% would means like 5 over 100. And then every fraction in its turn, it can be written as a decimal. So that would become a 0.05. So the first thing we have to say about percentages is that you need to understand the fractions, decimals, and percentages are equivalent. Therefore, they can express exactly the same thing or the other same thing. Number two, we're going to talk about increase or decrease by a percentage. And then given that we've already talked about the 5% and how that works, let's see what happens if we increase something or we decrease something by 5%. So let's start with the population of a town. So a town in 1990 had a population, and just make a nice number of 5,000 people. And then over the next 10 years, so by 2000, there has been and then we're going to check about two different scenarios. A 5% increase or a 5% decrease. And we're going to see how this is going to differentiate the increase from the decrease. So here we had the plus 5%, and then here we had minus 5%. So there's many ways of doing that. You could either calculate the 5% of the 5,000 people, and then in one case add it to the calculation, to the 5,000 people, or on the other hand, with a decrease, just subtract it. But there is a way of doing the calculation in one go, and that would be for the increase. We're going to have 5,000, which is the initial population, and then we're going to multiply it by 105% because there's been a 5% increase, or otherwise by 1.05, and that would provide us with the final answer. While on the other side, when we have the decrease, so the population goes down by 5%, the calculation is going to be 5,000 multiplied by 0.95. That corresponds to 95%, or otherwise 5% decrease. So the first calculation of the 5% increase we were talking before, that would give us the answer of 5,250. And that we said it's like 10 years later, at the year 2000, right? Whilst the population of the decrease is going to give us 5,000 and then multiplied by 0.95, and that will give us a 4,750. As you can see, the difference in the population on the left side is going to be plus 250 humans, and then minus 250 on the one side, where we have kind of like on the other hand that we have a 5% decrease. Now, there's two more things that we need to discuss, and we could continue with the same problem, but that wouldn't make sense because we already know the percentage increase or the percentage decrease. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna talk about a similar example. So let's say we have a town B, and in 1990, again, the population of the town was 9,350 people. And then 10 years later, or 20 years later, 2010, the population is now 11,230 people. So there's one more thing you need to be able to understand, two more concepts actually. The one is the absolute change. An absolute change is essentially by how much the population has increased or decreased or changed. So basically, we need to calculate we need to take away from the population that we have in 2010, subtract the population that we had in 1990, and the actual population change is 1,880 people. That is the absolute change in terms of the population for the same town B, right? But if we want to calculate the percentage change, so the percentage change, then we're going to have to do the following calculation. So from the calculation of 2010, from the population of 2010, so for 1,230, we need to take the initial value of the population, 9,350. Then we need to divide this by the population we had at the beginning, 9,350, and then whatever is the answer needs to be multiplied by 100, because that will make it as a percentage. That will change the result as a percentage. So here we've already calculated the actual change, which is 1,880 divided by 9,350, and as you can see that's going to be a decimal, right? So let's just do this calculation. So this is going to give us 0.201065 and so on, and then we multiply this by 100. So the final percentage change on the calculation that I did before is 20.1%, and that's rounded to three significant figures. Okay, so let's revisit very quickly all the concepts we talked about. Concept number one, fractions, decimal, and percentages are equivalent. Do not forget that. Number two, increase and decrease by a percentage. When you increase by a percentage, you might as well just multiply by 1.05 if you increase by 5%, or by 0.95 when you decrease. Increase and decrease can be factored into the calculations that you do and make your life so much easier, right? And then with the second example, we saw two different concepts. Number three is the absolute change. So it's actually, for the population, we talked about by how much has the population increased or decreased, and in this case it was 1,880 people. And then concept number four, we're talking about the percentage change. And the percentage change is like the absolute change divided by the original amount, and then of course multiplied by 100 to turn it into a percentage. That's it for now.